They didn't intend to start a war, but they did. First, there was the signal, a simple, powerful radio packet transmitted from an advanced station orbiting Pluto. There were no threats, no words at all, just a resonant, pulsating radiation designed to attract attention. Scientists called it a beacon of reason, a mission of peace, a gesture from humanity ready for dialogue. But humanity had little idea who it was talking to. The answer came 9 years later. It wasn't a word. It was a ship, a huge construction, elongated like a needle, pierced the Jupiter orbit, slowed down with a gravity anchor and hung in the void. Only one messenger came out of it, a creature covered in a layer of translucent matter, without facial features, without visible organs of speech. It made contact with the command of the United Earth Fleet and spoke only 3 words, clearly, coldly. "You are a threat." The connection was lost. 2 days later, the Kuiper Belt burst into flames. Small colonies and mining stations disappeared from radar, burned by invisible fire. The humans responded in their own style. They responded with a fleet. The mobilization began. The splinter nations of Earth, the Martian enclaves, the lunar syndicates all put aside their differences. For the first time since the Lunar Council split, a unanimous decision was made. The battle for existence. The generals said, "We'll have to show them our teeth." The politicians said, "We're defending the human race." The scientists said, "We've made a mistake." The first battle at Saturn lasted 37 minutes. The humans used everything: railgun platforms, light spears, quasar projectiles. The answer was silent. One maneuver and the entire advance fleet was gone, vaporized by a wave that could not even be detected. There were no survivors. This was the moment when fear turned to rage. The humans sent a second wave, not as a message but as a cry. "If you have come to judge us, be prepared to be judged." They carried psionic modules, illegal black technologies from Sirius, living crystals of the mind. They were ready to become monsters to fight the gods. And the war began for real, not for resources, not for territory, for the right to say, "We exist," for the audacity to be people, imperfect, noisy, but free. In the depths of space, the first shot rang out, not with sound, not with light, and by intention. They called themselves Ishar, not because that was their name, but because the humans couldn't think of any other designation. The name came from the distorted echo of first contact, filtered through the ashes of a dead station orbiting Saturn, through the charred fragments of a transmitter. Ayar. Translated from the ancient language of a forgotten civilization, it meant those who hear the noise of life as a threat. The Ayar did not use ships in the traditional sense. They came in forms, perfect, eerily precise, geometric. Their designs were like fractals suspended in the void, constantly changing, as if breathing thought. They were invisible to radar, but every person aboard felt their approach, a sudden chill, a hum in the bones, a distortion of time. People called it the silence before extinction. The battles became unimaginable. In the vicinity of Titan, General Enar's fleet of the Lunar Coalition used the Death Song, a sonic resonator capable of disrupting neural networks at light-second range. The Ishar seemed to crumble into nothingness. But 2 days later, the answer came. The Lunar Coalition neural networks had burned out, throwing millions into a coma. There had been no attack, only a return of what had been sent. And yet people did not retreat. They summoned the incarnates, people modified to the limit, with neural inserts that could see the curvature of space, with voices that could break reality into frequencies that only the gods could understand. There were 13 of them. Of these, 3 returned. One without a body, another without a name, the third without memory. Humanity began to change, not so much losing as becoming something else. They began to use fragments of Ishar designs, to build them into their ships. The Venusian architects built the Icarus, the Limit, a battle cruiser that thought on two time planes. It could not be defeated, but it could not return either. Its trajectory had twisted into another reality. It still sends messages with coordinates that do not exist. And then the mirror event happened. The Izhar spoke for the first time, through a hacked beacon on Mars, in a distorted voice as if coming from the inside of a skull. They did not offer peace. They offered a question. If you are noise, why do you want to be heard? And humanity gave an answer. It was not speech. It was action. People began to build not weapons, but the word, a construction capable of conveying the essence of man without distorting it in aggression. It was a gesture, not out of fear, not out of rage, but out of a desperate desire to be understood. The word was built in the core of a dead satellite, in the heart of a supernova, and in the minds of those who had not yet forgotten why it all began. Not for the sake of victory, for the sake of proof. Even if they are noise, this noise contains music. And in the depths of the galaxy, Izhar listened and prepared to respond. The word ended the day the front line disappeared. It happened suddenly, without a battle, without warning. Every reconnaissance station, beacon, and patrol fleet on the edge of occupied space transmitted the same signal. Silence. Not death, not defeat, just absence. The Izhar retreated, and then the word was activated. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't a weapon. It was a human, or rather, what had become a human after all the mutations, modifications, sleepless years. Her name was Laria Vent, and she was the last living speaker of Earth's 3 oldest languages, capable of speaking on the frequencies the Izhar could hear. There were threads of mirror graphene in her blood, fractal memory fields in her brain. She didn't speak with her mouth. She spoke with her presence. The word was sent into the very heart of the void, where ships had disappeared before, where scientists believed the Izhar consciousness node resided. Laria walked alone, inside a living capsule woven from organic metal that responded to her breath. She entered the silent zone. 3 days, no signal, no response. The Earth stations began to prepare for the worst. The Second Fleet was already moving towards the border when the first response was heard. It was inhuman, but there was music in it. Dissonance, noise, harmony in a non-linear structure. People could not decipher it, but Laria could. She did not return alone. In her wake were the changed, not humans, not Izhar. Beings in whom both sides were reflected in each other. They carried a new word. Fusion through understanding. It was not peace. This was the beginning of a new form of conflict, not physical but mental, semantic. Words became weapons, memory, armor. Thoughts took shape, and fear, mass. People began to change even faster. They created the named, creatures born not in the womb but in language. For them, a name was a program, a form, a purpose. One of the first named, Surtar, could enter the mind of an opponent and rewrite his intention. He did not kill, he dissuaded. But the merger with Izhar did more than bring peace. It awakened a third side. Those who came before, once they had swallowed whole nebulae, leaving silence behind them. They had slept behind the curtain of time until the noise of humanity had torn the fabric of oblivion. They were called the shards of true silence, and now they walked. Neither people, neither Izhar, even the named ones could not stop them alone. And then the word changed. It became the bridge. People and Izhar, for the first time in history, spoke the same name, and it responded. The name they spoke was unwritten. It could not be transmitted via radio or written in code. It belonged to no alphabet, no culture, no plane of perception. But when Laria and the oldest of the Izhar, the one they called He Who Never Slept, spoke it together, the galaxy shook. The name became the form. It became a pulsating structure, like a living sphere of woven light and shadow. It hung in the vacuum above the dead star's field, calling to itself. All sentient forms, human, Ijar, named, heard its call. It did not ring in the ears. It ringed in the memory. It was the gathering of the first meaning, the bridge between universes. When they entered, there was nothing. Only the echoes of oblivion, a shuddering shroud, colder than the space in which the shards lived. They did not attack. They erased. Their presence meant disappearance of individuals, of history, of entire cultures. They were not evil. They were anti-meaning, the natural consequence of too bright a light of thought. Humans, Azar and the name stood on the brink of extinction. And then from the depths of meaning, there arose the one whom no one called but everyone was waiting for. Karnar, the first one who ever spoke the name, the last one to leave before the beginning of time. He was not a body, not a consciousness, but a will, an entity capable of weaving noise, silence, and memory into one. His voice sounded inside the meaning and became fire. True silence is not the end. It is an expectation. Question. And you who called yourself the Word became the answer, and the shards trembled for the first time. Karnar did not fight them. He named them, and in that moment the silence received a face, and that was the beginning of its end. The final battle began not with a volley but with silence, not the one that foretells a storm, but the one in which new laws are born. Where there was chaos and fear before, the field of names arose, a vast space stretching beyond the edge of time, where every being became its own truth. No weapons, no deception, only you and how the universe calls you. That's where the army stepped, not into battle but into revelation. The fragments of true silence manifested themselves in the form of impossible constructs, anti-beings whose touch on matter turned stars into dust. They had no intention. They were the essence of oblivion itself, a mirror into which civilizations looked and disappeared, unable to bear the truth about themselves. The first to come out was Sir Tar, the Named, whose name meant he who makes choices audible. He approached one of the shards, a black vortex with 1,000 eyes within, and said, "I'm not afraid to be understood." The fragment trembled and dissolved. It did not disappear, it was named, and everything that has a name loses its absolute power. Then everyone joined the fight. People are in armor of meaning with words weapons, courage, memory, forgiveness. Ajar, in fractal harmony, in a choir of vibrations that destroyed the void. Named ones are like living laws manifested by form. Laria walked ahead, blazing with golden veins of the word. She held within herself the connection between species, between forms of thought, and behind her the word itself was transformed, from protection into a blade, from a blade into a voice, from a voice into light. The shards resisted. They devoured entire squads, turned screams into silence, tore the threads of memory. But now every loss became a new name. Each fallen left an echo behind, and that echo sang, and that song became reality. Then he appeared, Ark of the Nameless, core of the shards, the being who lost his name first, and therefore hated everything that sounds. He didn't speak with words, he spoke with absorption. You are a distortion, you are a mirage, you are a mistake. We are the choice, Laria replied, and we make a sound even when we are silent. She stepped into the center of the ark. Everyone knew it was a path to nowhere, but she carried within her the name that had been spoken together, by humanity, by Ijar, by the Named. She said it, once, and the ark heard itself for the first time. He trembled, he froze, and he remembered his name. It was his end and his release. The fragments were gone, not destroyed, but healed. They no longer sought silence. They became part of the song, deep and many-voiced, in which every race, every life form had a place, even those who once erased everything. The word remained, not as a weapon, as the beginning of a language in which the galaxy began to speak to itself. And then the first real peace came, which lasted exactly until that day, when a new void began to sing in the darkness. The song did not come from outside. She awakened inside. It all began on the planet Caraves, a former human colony, long abandoned and left empty. By all the maps, by all the sensors, it was dead. But one day, in a dream, one of the named ones, Ilthar, the keeper of memory, heard a call. He awoke, completely silent, with a tremor in his voice, although he had never felt fear before. "The song comes from below," he said. "Not from the void, but from those who have forgotten what it is to be alive." The team was quickly assembled, representatives of all three races, Laria, already a legend, and even one of the Echo Fallen, whose name was forbidden to speak after the war. They descended on Caraves and found something alive. It was not a life form known to biology. It was a thought that grew out of the fragments that were left behind, and she sang. The song was inhuman, something ancient, born from all the scraps, the forgotten feelings, the lost words, the messages left behind, the unsent letters, the dead hopes. It was a form of intelligence born from all the meanings that had ever been lost. She had no body, but she craved one thing. "Name me, give me the meaning, or I'll take yours." She called herself Ceballo, which translated from the Ejar language meant, "the one whose name has disappeared, but whose form remains." Ceballo was a mirror. Anyone who approached him heard the song of their fear. He did not attack, but anyone who listened to it for too long forgot who they were. They were erased from the field of names. Not even their loved ones remembered them. And that was worse than death. Laria tried to speak. The word trembled. It didn't work. "He does not want meaning," she said. "He wants to be everything, to be everyone, to become truth, erasing the difference." Ceballo began to grow. The song became a virus. It passed through the crystals of communication, through memory systems, through old dreams. It was not evil. It was too strong a desire to be heard, without limits, without borders, without others. Then Laria made a decision. She called to those who were silent, the elder echoes, the remnants of the shards that had become part of the song. No one had called them since the victory, but now she turned to them, not as enemies, but as those who knew what happened when meaning lost its center. And they answered. The elder of the echoes, now called Morkal, came with the final word of the void. It did not destroy. It tied the knot that closed the flow of oblivion. Laria, Morkal, and Ilthar together created the seal of the name, into which they wove everything, the word, the silence, the song, and the memory. The name was spoken in three voices, human, Ejhar, and echo-bearing. Ceballo fell silent. Didn't disappear. He took the name. He became part of the song, but he no longer wanted to be its only voice. Thus was born the choir of the limit, a new life form born from error, pain, and salvation. It spoke with the voices of all and none. And the world began again, fragile, alive, sounding, until the day when laughter rang out in the center of time, not human, not alien, and someone's very familiar. The laughter that echoed through the center of time was like a crack in the glass of history. It didn't register on the scanners. It didn't pass through the comnets. It just was, and everyone who had ever heard the song froze. Even the choir of the Reach, capable of hearing 1 billion voices at once, stopped short. Because that laughter wasn't humor. It was recognition. "He's back," Laria whispered. "The one we didn't name, because we were too afraid he'd answer. Name without word, shadow before the song. He who once gave up the will to become history and lost, but did not disappear. He called himself He Who Has No Name, and he had once been a man. One of the first incarnates, an archon of the ship Voice from the Deep. He had gone into the void before the war with Ejar, and had returned no longer a man. No one knew what he had experienced. No one understood that he had become more than a being. He had become an intent. "You have built the world on the word," he said, "but you have forgotten that the first word was a lie." And he began to remember. And every memory of his changed reality. Cities crumbled when he remembered destruction. People disappeared when he remembered loneliness. Even the stars trembled when he remembered how they were not. He did not destroy, he rewrote. Sabayo, an ancient enemy now part of the chorus, tried to speak to him, but the laughter replied, "You are an attempt, I am the root cause." The elders of the named have gathered. The fragments awakened by the song froze in horror. The Ajar folded the vibrations into a sign of the end. And Laria understood. The name without a word returned not for revenge, but for completion. "You tried so hard to become the word that you forgot the silence from which it came," he said. "I am the pause. I am the crossroads. And now I want to hear the silence again." The world was preparing for the final choice, but he came, a youth with a simple face, without armor, without a name, just a man. His name was Kia, and he was one whom the word had not yet touched. He was born in the shadow of the world, in those lands where the song had not yet reached. He looked at he who has no name and said, "You forgot the main thing, that the word is born from silence, but not for its sake, but for something else." "For what?" He grinned. "For the sake of an answer," said Kia, and he stepped into the limit. He became the word not spoken but heard, and at that moment even the name without a word fell silent, because he realized the answer is not in silence. The answer lies in the one who is willing to break it for the sake of another. And morning came at the center of time. When Kaya stepped beyond the limit, reality couldn't take it anymore. The limit was not a place or a time. It was what began when all words ended, where laws did not apply, not physics, not reason, not even memory. But Kaya carried no weapons, no name, no protection. He carried a question, and the limit answered him, with form. He didn't die. He didn't disappear. He became different. His body melted away like a husk. All that remained was a point, shining, pulsating faintly like a heart. And from that point, a new structure began to grow, unlike the word, the shadow, or the song. She was warm, alive, uncertain. And the limit said, "He became what you were afraid of, what you forgot, the beginning in which there is no meaning yet, but there is a desire to understand." He became the first question. The name without a word trembled for the first time. He looked at Kia, and for the first time in all the ages his voice became quieter. "You are not the word," he said. "You are danger. There is no final truth in you. There is only hope in you, and hope destroys everything that is built." Kia, shining like a flame against the backdrop of infinity, replied, "And you wanted to be the last, but I am the first. You are the end. I am the beginning. And as long as I exist, you will not be able to close the universe." He who has no name howled, not in rage, in realization. He realized that as long as the first question existed, he would never become the absolute. There would always be someone who would ask why, even in the face of silence. He stepped into Kia, not by attack, but by merging, and Kaya accepted it. The merging was painful. Light and emptiness, song and silence, the name and its refusal, all passed through the boy. But he did not disappear. He expanded. Thus a new archetype appeared. Tish Ki, he who asked with the shadow, neither God nor man nor named. And the basis for the next universe. He didn't rule, he listened. And every time a new race was born, he did not give them a name. He asked them the first question, "Who do you want to be and why?" And each time, the universe sang in a new way. Thus began the age of question. But far away, beyond the stars, in a forgotten pocket of dead time, someone collected the fragments of words that were forgotten, forbidden, mutilated, and waited. When Kia stepped beyond the limit, reality couldn't take it anymore. The limit was not a place or a time. It was what began when all words ended, where laws did not apply, not physics, not reason, not even memory. But Kia carried no weapons, no name, no protection. He carried a question, and the limit answered him, with form. He didn't die, he didn't disappear, he became different. His body melted away like a husk. All that remained was a point, shining, pulsating faintly like a heart. And from that point, a new structure began to grow, unlike the word, the shadow, or the song. She was warm, alive, uncertain. And the limit said, he became what you were afraid of, what you forgot. The beginning, in which there is no meaning yet, but there is a desire to understand. He became the first question. The name without a word trembled for the first time. He looked at Kia, and for the first time in all the ages his voice became quieter. You are not the word, he said. You are danger. There is no final truth in you. There is only hope in you, and hope destroys everything that is built. Kia, shining like a flame against the backdrop of infinity, replied, and you wanted to be the last, but I am the first. You are the end, I am the beginning. And as long as I exist, you will not be able to close the universe. He stepped into Kia, not by attack, but by merging. And Kia accepted it. The merging was painful. Light and emptiness, song and silence, the name and its refusal all passed through the boy. But he did not disappear. He expanded. Thus a new archetype appeared. Teish Kia, he who asked with the shadow, neither God nor man nor named, and the basis for the next universe. He didn't rule, he listened, and every time a new race was born, he did not give them a name. He asked them the first question, who do you want to be, and why? And each time, the universe sang in a new way. Thus began the age of question. But far away, beyond the stars, in a forgotten pocket of dead time, someone collected the fragments of words that were forgotten, forbidden, mutilated, and waited. You were the one called Laom. Not by birth, not by will, because you forgot who you were before you were called. You woke up one day in the cloud of echoes, a place where words fly away from the mind, leaving no meaning. There were others around you, those who spoke, shouted, sang. But you were silent, not because you didn't know how, but because you felt it wasn't time yet. You were not the named one, not the singer, not the word bearer. You were the bearer of the empty name. Teish Kia found you not by a trace, but by the absence of a trace. He stood before you, glowing faintly in the gray air between realities, and said, you know what's coming. The one who collects the forgotten has already begun to write his song. It will sound like the other side of the question, and it will eclipse everything. You remained silent. He nodded. So you're ready. You became the first of 7. The rest were the same. Broken, lost, incomplete. Seth, speaking in a mirror, every word of his was an echo of someone else's. Iriah, whose voice was a flash of pain. Mien, who gave up his own mind to carry the memories of others. Krell T, an old man who only speaks in his dreams. Juner, a child without time, every step she took was a trace of the future. And the 7th is Teish Kia, no longer a god, not a voice, but a satellite. 7 walked into the heart of oblivion. It wasn't a place. It was the living essence of all the words that were unspoken, everything that had ever been conceived but not put into sound, everything that had been clutched in the chest but not spoken. It was hard, not physically, existentially, like every step led deeper into who you could have been but weren't. You, Laom, walked ahead, because there was an empty space in you. It was this that attracted. On the border of oblivion, you met the first of the silencers. He was familiar. He wore your face. You are me, he said. You are what I was before I failed. Come back. Forget the choice. Forget the question, and we will be whole again. You didn't answer. You just took a step forward, through him, and he crumbled into ashes of words. The others realized that there was something in you that even Teish Kia did not have. You are the empty name, ready to accept the truth, not imposed, but chosen. The further you walked, the deeper the darkness became. And in its very depths, the collector waited. He was not alone. He was everyone who was forgotten. His voice was like 1,000 whispers, and each one was someone who had once loved, but forgotten. Have you come to stop me? He asked. You, Laom, took a step and said your first word. No, we came to remember. And then everything around began to shake. The collector recoiled. He did not know what to do with someone who did not fight but remembered. You started talking, not loudly. You called the names of the forgotten. You brought them back from the darkness, not all, but enough. Light began to break through the fabric of oblivion. Teish Kia put his hand on your shoulder. Now do you know who you are? You smiled. I am Laom. He who remembers those who have been forgotten. And while I am alive, oblivion will not win. The heart of oblivion was not a being. It was not even a will. It was the pause between all the stories, the place where even the song died, where even the question lost its shape, where even Tashkia looked down and whispered, "This is the end." But you, Lam, already knew. The end is a form of memory curled up in on itself. You have come to the very center. There was nothing, no light, no darkness, no sound, no thought, only potential. You felt it whispering, not to you, but through you. I am what remains when everything else goes away. I am the gap between what is said and what is understood. I am the emptiness that you fill with fears, meanings, hope. Why did you come to me, Lam? You closed your eyes, and instead of answering, he remembered. You remembered your mother, whose voice you did not remember. A friend whose name has been erased in the whispers of the world. Love that no one knew about, and the dream you buried when you were 9. You remembered yourself. Not great, not a hero, and a person. And you said, I didn't come to destroy you. I came to fill you, with those who deserved to be heard but weren't, with those who remained in the shadows and became its light. The heart of oblivion trembled. Do you want to give me a name? It asked. You shook your head. No, I want you to finally hear yours. And you pronounced it. Not with my voice, not mentally, but with my whole being. And at that moment the heart understood. It was not an enemy. It was an expectation of an answer. It became the center of memory. The collector has disappeared, not in defeat, into freedom. He didn't collect anymore. He let go. The silencers dissolved, like shadows that were just light covered by a palm. You stood in the center of everything. And from an empty name he became the source of remembrance. Tashkia smiled. You didn't just give oblivion a name, you made it a home. No, you answered. I just reminded him that there is more than one. And on that day, in the deepest silence, the galaxy sang a new song, not about war, not about victory, about memory. And it started with your name. After that day, Laom was no longer just a man. He became memory walking on the stars. But not a god, not a symbol. He did not rule, did not build temples, did not lead armies. He walked. He appeared where someone began to forget who he was, where the ancient song lost its notes, where questions turned into indifference, where the pause threatened to engulf the living. Sometimes he would sit next to the dying voice in a small village on the edge of the system and just listen. Sometimes he touched the forgotten ship with his hand, and it again remembered its purpose. Sometimes he simply remained silent, and that was enough for the place that was considered cursed to sing again. Nobody called him by name, but those who heard the steps in the void said, He came, guide of memory, the elder brother of the forgotten light. Laom was not alone. Set, Iraya, Mien, Krell-T, Junior, and even Tashkia, they all went their separate ways. Each of them carried a part of the heart, a part of the new song. And in those rare places where their shadows met, beings without race, but with memory, began to be born. They were called, looking back. They didn't build cities. They didn't expand an empire. They searched in the silence for what had been missed. And Laom once reached the edge of the world, the one that lay beyond all the maps, where the stars did not burn because they had not yet been named. There he found a child, simple, naked, sleeping. There was nothing near him. But when Laom sat down and spoke, the child opened his eyes. And he said, Do you remember me? Laom nodded. He always remembered. This was the future world, and he was just starting to learn to speak. Will you teach me words? Asked the child. No, Laom smiled. I will teach you to listen. And they were left alone at the very beginning of the future universe. Because before we talk, someone has to remember why. His name was Aiel. The name did not come immediately, not from heaven, not from prophecy. It arose in the silence, when Laom first said it not out loud but with his gaze, when the child raised his eyes and looked into infinity. Aiel, reality itself whispered, the one who will be the first but not the only one. He was not a god, he was not a hero, he was the beginning of language, but he did not master it. He studied, he asked, he made mistakes. Laom taught him not words, but between words. They sat on a nameless stone under a starless sky. And Laom said, You want to create? Then first learn to lose. Do you want to understand? Then listen to the silence between the voices. Do you want to be heard? Then remember those who have never been heard. And Il grew, not in body but in spirit. He had no time. It was only forming around him. Each of his feelings became the law of the future. Each of his mistakes is a legend of the next world. And when he first said, I am Il, I want to speak to be heard. I want to hear so as not to forget others. The universe trembled, and the song of creation was born, not like a symphony, like a pulse, like a breath, like the first beat of a heart that is not yet there, but is already there. You, Laom, stood nearby, old, slow, transparent like a trace on the water. Il looked at you and asked, Will you leave when I speak? You shook your head. I won't leave. I will be absorbed into your song. I will become her memory, and you will never be alone. And then Il spoke the first word. It was simple, but not because it was short, because it was real. It didn't destroy. It created light, stars, the fabric of time, and the first people born not from matter, but from the intention to be together. This is how the new universe began. And somewhere, in every living creature born in it, there was a spark, memory, silence, words, question, and Laoma. They called themselves the Kaylin, not because someone gave them this name. They chose it themselves, the moment they first heard the song of El within themselves. The name meant, we are those who sound together, not in unison, in consonance. They were not flesh like humans, not by vibration like Ejar, not a form of memory like the named. The Kailana were meanings given body. Each of them was like a song, like a myth, like a whisper that became a form. They did not live in cities, but with them. Their houses were living structures, singing their names. Their journeys were not from planet to planet, but from meaning to meaning. They did not build weapons. They built question spaces, living fields in which one could feel someone else's pain as one's own. They did not fight, but those who came with war remained, changing their name. In each of them there was a spark of Laom, a memory of who they were before the song, before the body, before birth. This memory did not oppress. It reminded, you are not an accident. You are the result of someone's choice to remember you. El became their mentor, but not their leader. He was he who inspires the question. He lived among them, and with each passing year he grew not taller, but quieter, until one day he disappeared, leaving behind not a body, not a temple, but a trace in all the voices. And Laom, he became a legend beyond legend. Sometimes, when the Kaylin children played in the gravel wind and argued over who was the first, who remembered everyone, their elders only smiled and whispered, Laom was not the first. He was the one who stayed when everyone left, and that is why he stayed forever. The story did not end with an ending. It ended in silence, full of meaning. The song of the new universe sounded, and in every chord of it, the choice to remember rang out.